Okay, so let's dive into something that's really personal, isn't it? And incredibly relevant for, well, for so many of us.
Hmm.
This decision about moving into a nursing home, maybe for ourselves down the line or for someone we love.
Yeah, it's a huge one.
And it's often framed around safety, right? Getting care, maybe making life a bit easier. But what does it actually feel like once you're inside, looking back after a few months or even years?
That's exactly it. That's the heart of what we're exploring in this deep dive. We're looking at this really raw and honest account. It's from an 82-year-old who made that move
Hmm.
and later reflected on it, realizing, well, they came to regret it.
Regret it. Wow.
Yeah, and they actually spelled out 6 specific things, 6 sort of hard truths they learned about how their life changed in ways they just hadn't expected.
Okay, 6 hard truths. And I think it's important, like you said, this isn't about saying all nursing homes are bad or judging anyone's choices. People need care.
Absolutely not. That's not the goal here.
Right. This deep dive is really about trying to understand the lived experience, the one this person describes in their account. We're going to unpack these 6 regrets they shared, pull out what they learned, because their perspective, it feels like it could be, well, crucial for anyone thinking about this.
It's about seeing it beyond just logistics or, medical charts.
Yeah, seeing it through the eyes of someone who actually went through it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Moving past the theory into the really personal impact this person felt. So let's start with the first one. The first regret they mentioned, which apparently hit them almost right away,
Okay, what was that?
the profound loss of independence.
Ah, okay. Independence.
Yeah. They said the initial shock wasn't really about the building itself or even the other people there.
Yeah.
It was just the sudden, almost total loss of control over their own day, their own life.
Right. That makes sense. Can you give an example from the account?
Well, they contrast it, with life at home.
Hmm.
Before, they had their own rhythm. They decided when to wake up, when to eat, if they wanted to go for a walk, maybe just sit and read.
Normal stuff. Master of your own domain, basically.
Exactly. Your time was yours. Your space was yours.
But in the nursing home.
That just evaporated, according to them. Suddenly, their day was run by a schedule, someone else's schedule. Breakfast at 8, lunch at 12, dinner at 5, lights out at 10, whatever it was, everything set.
Wow.
And wanting to do something simple, like just stepping outside for some air, you might need to ask permission or wait until staff were free to help or supervise.
So things you've done your whole life, suddenly you need permission.
Or assistance, yeah,
Yeah.
that's how they described it. Basic choices, like
Mhm.
deciding when to shower, or maybe even just what to wear. They started to feel like privileges you had to ask for, rather than just things you do.
That must be incredibly jarring.
It sounds like it was a huge shift from being autonomous.
The account mentioned a specific story about that.
Yeah, there's this really vivid bit from their first week, waking up, feeling kind of lost in this unfamiliar bed, and reaching out, maybe just by instinct, for something familiar like a book they'd been reading at home. And then it just hits them. The full weight of it. This isn't my home anymore.
Yeah.
Their own chair, their photos, the little things that make a place yours, gone. Replaced by something, well, institutional.
That sounds heartbreaking. The loss of the physical space, too.
Right. That combined with the scheduled life, that was the first big unexpected blow they described.
And what was the key insight they took from that?
This is crucial. They felt that once you give up that day-to-day independence, that control, getting it back feels almost impossible. You just adapt. You have to, right, to fit into the system.
You go along to get along.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
stop making those little spontaneous choices. Maybe you stop even questioning things. And in that process of adapting, they felt like they were starting to lose a part of themselves, sort of a passive surrender.
That's a really powerful point. It makes you stop and think, are you really prepared for that? Or is the person you're thinking about this for prepared for how much control over the small things might just slip away?
It's not just the big decisions, is it? It's the tiny ones that make up your day.
Yeah, thousands of them.
Absolutely. And, that actually connects in a way to the second hard truth they talked about.
Yeah.
Which sounds incredibly painful. It's the feeling of being forgotten.
Oh, wow. Forgotten. That sounds devastating. Just the idea that life outside keeps moving, the world carries on, and you're kind of set apart.
Yeah, that's exactly how they put it. They talked about the reassurances first.
Yeah.
Family saying, oh, we'll visit all the time. And he said, to be fair, the beginning, they did. Maybe a daughter came weekly, grandkids on the weekend. There was still that connection.
Yeah, okay. So it started okay.
But then, time goes on. Life happens. The daughter starts calling more often, visiting a bit less. Maybe it's harder to get away from work.
Right.
The grandkids get busier. Stool, jobs, their own friends, their own lives taking off. That's natural, but
But the visits dwindle?
they dwindle. And they mention holidays being particularly tough. Maybe plans get changed last minute or people can only stay for a short while. And they find themselves sitting there in the common room maybe, watching other people just waiting, hoping someone might stop by.
That image is just incredibly sad. Waiting.
And they made a point of saying, look, it wasn't that their family stopped loving them. They got the life is complicated. But their experience was when you're out of sight, when you're not part of the daily flow anymore, it just becomes easier, maybe subconsciously, for people to assume you're okay, that you're settled in, that you don't need them quite as much.
But the reality was the opposite.
For them, yes. The longer they were there, the more they felt they needed that connection. But the gap just seemed to get wider.
Wow.
They share this really quiet, heartbreaking little moment, sitting in their room, holding the phone, thinking about calling their son,
Yeah.
and just hesitating, not wanting to seem like a burden,
Oh, yeah. That feeling.
not wanting to have to ask for attention or remind him they existed. So they put the phone down. And that stark realization just lands, that their life had partly become about waiting for visits that might not happen as often as they hoped.
That really highlights a potential challenge, doesn't it? Even with a loving family, the physical distance, the change in routine, it can lead to this deep loneliness.
It really can. It poses that tough question. Are you prepared for that possibility? That keeping those vital connections alive might take a lot more active effort, maybe from both sides, than you realize.
That's a critical point this account brings up. Okay, so moving to the third truth. This sounds fundamental, losing a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
They felt it wasn't just about changing where they live, but changing why they live.
That's a powerful way to put it, and it captures what they described. At home, they had purpose just baked into the day. Little things, maybe, but meaningful. Watering the plants, making their own coffee just right, tidying up, maybe a hobby.
Things that give structure, responsibilities, even small ones.
Exactly. But in the nursing home, those things just vanished. And meals, prepared and brought to you. Cleaning, done by staff. Laundry, same. No plants to look after. Anything that gave them a reason to do something beyond just, existing was suddenly gone.
Did they anticipate that? Or did they think maybe it'd be nice to relax?
They admit, the initial thought was maybe, this will be nice, finally relax, no more chores.
I can see that appeal.
Sure. But that feeling didn't last long. After a few weeks, it gave way to this emptiness. The days felt long, just stretching out ahead with nothing really pulling them forward, just sitting, staring, waiting for the next meal, the next scheduled activity.
That sounds draining.
They noticed it in other residents, too. People who came in quite active, maybe engaged in hobbies. They seemed to slowly fade, spend more and more time just sitting.
Is there an example?
Yeah, they mentioned a man named George. He was 84, a carpenter all his life. At home, his hands were always busy, building birdhouses, fixing things.
Someone with skills, with purpose.
Right. But in the home, no workshop, no tools, no projects, nothing for him to make or fix or contribute. The source watched his skilled hands just become idle. And they heard him say it, that deep fear, I feel useless.
Oh, gosh.
And the person telling this story knew exactly what George meant. They felt it too.
So the insight here is, wow, purpose isn't just a nice to have, it's like the engine, especially later in life.
That's what this account strongly suggests. When you strip away the daily responsibilities, the little things you care for, the tasks that give structure, life can lose its meaning. And they felt that without that drive, both mental and physical decline seemed to happen faster.
That makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It gives your life meaning right now, those little routines, those tasks. And if you were in a place where those were gone, how would you fight to keep or find a new sense of purpose?
It's not just about keeping busy, is it? It's about feeling needed, feeling capable, feeling connected to something.
Yeah. Feeling like you still matter in a practical way. Okay, regret number 4. This one seems surprising. Declining health faster than expected.
Right. It's counterintuitive. You go in thinking, okay, care, support, maybe therapy, I'll be looked after, health should stabilize, maybe even improve.
That would be the assumption, yeah.
But this person's experience was the opposite. They felt their physical health went downhill faster inside the home than it had been outside.
How did they explain that?
Well, before moving in, they were reasonably active for their age, carrying groceries, maybe some light stretching, walking around the house, gardening, just daily life movement.
Okay. Consistent, small efforts.
Exactly. But inside the nursing home, the environment itself, kind of paradoxically, encouraged inactivity.
How so?
Everything was made easy. Too easy, perhaps. Meals brought right to you. Need something. Push a button, someone comes. You don't have to get up and do things for yourself nearly as much.
Ah, the convenience trap.
That's exactly what they realized firsthand. That convenience had a hidden cost, a physical one. The less they had to do, the weaker they felt they became. They stopped walking as much because, well, why would they? Everything was close or brought to them.
So muscles just weren't getting used.
Right. They described their legs feeling stiffer. Getting up out of a chair suddenly felt like a real effort, not automatic. The muscle tone they'd maintained without even thinking about it, their whole lives just started disappearing.
Did they see this in others too?
Yes, they said it seemed like a pattern. People who walked in using maybe just a cane or independently, gradually they'd start relying on walkers. Then maybe wheelchairs, people who could dress themselves needing help. It seemed from their observation the more help was available, the faster people lost the ability to do things for themselves.
Wow. Is there a specific story about that?
They mentioned a woman named Alice. She came in, apparently quite lively, insisting she'd keep up her daily walks, stay active.
Good intentions.
Definitely. But according to the source, within just a few months, Alice was using a walker, then a wheelchair, and the source felt she looked like she'd aged 10 years in that short time. It wasn't just Alice. They saw this kind of accelerated decline around them.
So the lesson they took from that is pretty stark.
Very stark, basically. Use it or lose it. When you stop using your body in those everyday ways, you lose that ability surprisingly fast. And in a place designed for ease, it's incredibly easy to just slip into not moving much.
So movement wasn't just about fitness, it felt like survival.
That's the word they used, yes. Preserving function felt like survival. They said if they'd understood how quickly strength could go in that setting, they would have fought much harder to stay active, to resist just sitting back.
It raises a tough question, doesn't it? How do you stay motivated to push yourself physically when everything around you is designed to make effort unnecessary?
It's a huge internal battle, I imagine,
Yeah.
one most of us haven't really faced.
No kidding. Okay, let's move to the fifth regret, another deeply personal one, the loss of privacy and dignity.
Yeah. This is something they probably knew would change to some degree, but they said they didn't fully grasp the extent of it until they were living it.
What did that look like day to day?
Well, think about it. At home, you have your space. You close your door, you have solitude, privacy. That's normal.
Right, your sanctuary.
In the nursing home, according to this account, maintaining that sense of personal private space was incredibly hard, almost impossible sometimes.
How so? Constant interruptions.
That was part of it. Staff needing to come in and out for checks, for care, for cleaning, scheduled room checks, shared common areas where you're always sort of on display, and then the really personal stuff, needing help with dressing, showering, using the toilet, things you've done alone for 80 years.
That must feel incredibly vulnerable.
They acknowledged the staff were, doing their jobs, often kindly, but it was still deeply challenging to have to ask for help, to surrender control over these basic intimate tasks, waiting for someone after pressing a call button. It just chipped away at something fundamental they felt.
It wasn't just about physical care, was it?
No. Limited choices, too. Even small things, like what's available for dinner, felt like another little loss of control, of agency.
And roommates. If you didn't have a private room.
Right. That's a huge factor for privacy. Sharing your bedroom, your most intimate space, with a stranger. Someone you didn't choose. They might have totally different habits, be noisy, maybe have cognitive issues that are disruptive. It makes your room feel less like yours.
Less like a safe haven.
Exactly. More like a shared ward, maybe. The source described their room just never truly feeling like their own, even with some personal items around.
Did they mention how staff interactions affected dignity?
Yeah, that came up too.
Yeah.
Staff knocking, but maybe not really waiting for an answer before coming in. Or sometimes being addressed in a way that felt clinical, like a patient first and a person second.
Instead of an individual with a whole life story.
Right. And having your whole day, your whole rhythm dictated by the institution's schedule. It all adds up.
So the feeling was this constant erosion of privacy and control just changes you.
That's what they said. It makes you feel less like the independent, dignified person you always saw yourself as. Losing that sense of self, piece by piece, was one of the hardest things they dealt with, and they just hadn't fully braced for it.
It really makes you ask, are you truly prepared for that level of surrender, of lifelong privacy, of control over your own body and space?
Based on this account, it touches absolutely every part of your day. It's profound.
Okay, and the final regret, number 6. This one feels heavy, realizing it's much harder to leave than you think.
Yeah, this is maybe the most heartbreaking in a way, because it deals with that finality, that closed door. The person telling this story, they initially went in thinking, okay, this might be temporary.
Like a trial run.
Sort of. Or maybe for recovery after an illness.
Yeah.
The idea was, I can try this, and if it's not right, I can just go home.
That sounds like a reasonable thought process.
It does. But they learned pretty quickly that getting back out was way more complicated than getting in.
How so? What were the barriers?
Well, their house was still there, but trying to manage it from the nursing home. Arranging maintenance, bills. It's a nightmare logistically. And their children, probably meaning well, had already started adjusting. Selling off some belongings, maybe talking about renting the house out to cover costs.
Oh, wow. So practical steps were already being taken that made going back harder.
Exactly. And when the person actually brought up moving back home, they faced hesitation. Questions from the family like, are you sure you're strong enough now? Isn't it safer for you here? Concerns about their ability to cope alone.
And did their own physical state play into that? From regret number 4?
Absolutely. That was a huge factor. Remember the faster physical decline they experienced?
Right. Less activity, getting weaker.
So after months of not managing a house, not cooking, cleaning, maybe not climbing stairs, their actual physical strength was lower, but also their confidence in their ability to live independently had taken a hit.
The psychological barrier, too.
Yes. The idea of going back and managing everything felt much more daunting than it would have before they moved in. It's like the system designed to care for them had, unintentionally, made them less capable of leaving it.
That's a really difficult irony. Did they see this happen to others?
Yes. They mentioned meeting many others in the facility with similar stories, people who thought it was temporary, maybe for rehab, only to find that leaving just wasn't a simple option anymore. The longer you stay, the harder it gets to imagine, let alone manage, life outside again.
And for some, the option disappears completely.
If the house gets sold to pay for care, or if savings run out, yeah, the door closes permanently for some.
So the stark reality they describe is moving in feels reversible, but often it isn't.
That's the crux of it. It feels like a choice you can undo, but the practicalities, the physical changes, the financial shifts, they can make it functionally irreversible for many. The nursing home can kind of slowly become your whole world, and the outside world starts to feel like a distant memory, maybe one you can't get back to.
Wow. This final regret really underscores the weight of the initial decision.
It leaves us with that critical thought. Are you prepared for the possibility that this move, even if intended as temporary, might become permanent? The barriers to leaving can be really significant.
Okay, so let's try to pull this all together. These 6 regrets described in this incredibly personal account. Losing independence and control over your day.
That feeling of being forgotten, disconnected.
The erosion of purpose, feeling useless.
The surprising physical decline, faster than expected.
The constant loss of privacy and dignity.
And finally, realizing how hard, maybe impossible, it is to leave.
When you put them all together, the cumulative impact is huge. It goes way beyond just getting help with meds or meals.
It's a fundamental transformation of life itself as this person experienced it.
And they did acknowledge, right, that sometimes nursing homes are absolutely necessary.
Oh, absolutely. They made that clear in their final thoughts. For people needing high-level medical care, round-the-clock supervision, things that just can't be done at home. These places are vital.
So the regret wasn't about nursing homes existing.
No. The regret stemmed from feeling they went in without fully understanding the entire picture, without grasping the full scope of the trade-offs, especially those subtle but fundamental losses of self, of connection, of purpose, of capability.
Things maybe you don't think about when you're focused on safety and care logistics.
Exactly. Things that weren't maybe on the brochure, so to speak.
So what was their final advice based on this experience?
It was powerful, really. A call to action for anyone facing this. They urged people to fight harder if possible, to find ways to stay home, to explore every single alternative for getting support without giving up autonomy and dignity.
Like home care, modifications, community support.
All of it. And to really, truly, honestly assess the actual level of need versus the profound sacrifices that might be involved. Basically, don't make the move lightly and understand it might be more permanent than you think.
It's about seeing both sides clearly. The potential benefits of care, yes, but also this potential price in terms of, well, the things that make life feel like your life.
A price this individual felt wasn't fully clear until they were already paying it.
It really does force you to think beyond the practicalities, doesn't it? To consider the deep human stuff. So, As we wrap up this deep dive, the question this account leaves us with is pretty profound. When we're navigating these incredibly tough decisions about aging, about care for ourselves or for people we love, how do we approach it? Not just thinking about safety or convenience, but thinking about how to actively preserve those things that make life meaningful.
Independence.
Purpose.
Connection.
Dignity.
How do we keep those central to the conversation, central to the plan?
That feels like the real challenge this personal story puts before us. Something important for all of us to think about.